Good morning. Our family will be sharing one of the most familiar stories in the Bible, Daniel in the lion's den. Even though Daniel was an old man at that time, he refused to take the easy way out and abandon God. The threat of an agonizing death did not change his trust in God. Daniel's name means God is my judge. And in this miracle, God, not man, judged Daniel and found him innocent. Daniel stood for the truth, and God saved him from death.
Our story begins in Medo-Persia, where King Darius was the ruler of the land. He was very rich and powerful ruler. Amongst the king's servants, King Darius made Daniel the second ruler next to him because Daniel was a faithful and wise servant. He made him rule over all the people of the kingdom, over all the wise men of the kingdom, over all the ministers of the kingdom. This made the ministers of the kingdom jealous of Daniel. They planned to kill him. They could not find any fault on him, but they knew Daniel was very faithful to his God. And Daniel prayed 3 times a day with his window open towards Jerusalem. They plotted to kill him, making a law that no one in the entire kingdom should worship any other gods, but worship only King Darius for 30 days.
The ministers came to the king's presence and introduced the law that no one in the kingdom could worship any god except the king himself for 30 days. Any man found worshiping other god would be punished to death. The king was very pleased with the decree and he approved it right away. The next morning, the ministers went to spy on Daniel. They saw Daniel praying to his God with his window open towards the direction to Jerusalem. Then they went to King Darius and reported that they saw Daniel praying to his God. The king was sad to hear the news, but the king couldn't do anything, for he had approved the decree that no one in his kingdom could pray to any other god for 30 days. So the guard seized Daniel and threw him into the lion's den.
The king wept and couldn't sleep that night. He refused to eat. He would allow no music to be played. He was thinking of Daniel all throughout the night. When the morning came, the king went to the lion's den. The guard rolled away the stone, and the king called out, "O Daniel, is thy God whom thou servest able to deliver you?" And the king heard the voice of Daniel saying, "O king, live forever. My God had sent his angel to protect me from the lion's mouth, that they have not hurt me." The king was very happy and ordered his guards to lift up Daniel from the lion's den. There wasn't a tear in Daniel's clothes. There wasn't a claw mark on his hands. There wasn't a scratch on his face. Daniel was brought out unharmed because he trusted in his God. King Darius had the men who falsely accused Daniel arrested. Along with their wives and children, they were all thrown into the lion's den, where they were immediately killed by the beast.
There are lessons we can learn from this story. Lesson number 1. God was a central aspect of Daniel's life. There was nothing more important to Daniel than God. Everything in Daniel's life revolved around God. We can learn from this example. Many have heard the analogy of a wheel on a bike. The case for far too many Christians is that instead of being the central part of all the spokes revolve around, God is merely another spoke. He's merely a part of our lives, right along with sports, academics, hobbies, etc. This wasn't the case with Daniel. nor should it be the case for us in our Christian walks today. He should be the fundamental, most important part of our lives, with everything else revolving around Him. Unfortunately, it's easy for God not to be on the forefront of our minds most of the day. Sometimes He simply enters our thoughts every now and then when we pray before a meal or when we sit through a Bible class. This isn't the way we should treat someone whose incredible grace saves us each and every day. We're supposed to love God with all of our hearts, souls, and minds. Don't push God back to just being a part of your life, our lives. As shown in the life of Daniel, he needs to be the central part of your life that everything else revolves around.
We listen to Daniel use his influence. We are influenced by so much every single day, some negative and positive. Consequently, we also have the power of influence. The people we come in contact with, whether it be the waiter at the restaurant or the visitors at the church, we all influence in some way. Sadly, many Christians don't use their influence to further God's kingdom. Not all people are brought to Christ through direct evangelism. It starts with the example. If people can tell Christians apart from the rest of the world, we are missing the first major step. After King Darius' Daniel was spared from being eaten by the lions, he decreed that no one should worship anyone but the God of Daniel. Daniel used his influence in an extremely positive and powerful way. Well, we as Christians today may never able to have influence in changing laws like Daniel did. Our influence can still be used for God's glory.
Lesson number 3. Daniel didn't waver when hardship arose. Most people who know the story of Daniel know the reason he was thrown into the lion's den. The other administrators working under King Darius were exceedingly jealous of King's favoritism toward Daniel, as well as his renowned success as governor. So they tried to find something they could charge Daniel with, either in his ruling skill or his personal life, that would diminish his influence with the king. They couldn't find any error or fault in Daniel because he was faithful. So these satraps and governors tricked the king into signing a law basically forbidding anyone in the kingdom to worship anyone as God beside Darius. Chapter 6 of Daniel, verse 10 reads, Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room with his window open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. It wasn't like Daniel wasn't aware of the new decree. He was completely aware, but that didn't matter to him. Again, pleasing God was the most important thing to him.
There are many lessons we can learn from the life of Daniel that go far beyond him being thrown into the lion's den. He was a faithful servant of God who didn't waver or compromise when hardships arose. He put God first and foremost in his life, and he was blessed for it. We can apply many of Daniel's principles to our lives today. Next time you hear the name Daniel, I encourage you to reflect on his continuous examples of faithful servitude towards God rather than just to the picture of a guy sitting with lions. Thank you for listening. Happy weekend.